I have Magic legend Frank Kirsten. Would you like to tell a little bit about yourself? I'm a member of the Magic Pro Tour Hall of Fame. I've played in a lot of high-level competitive events in Magic. I also do a lot of writing about the game for Wizards of the Coast, often with a bit of a mathematical touch because that's where my academic background lies. I will be presented with Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Mind you, I have literally never seen Yu-Gi-Oh cards before. I feel like I'm aware that the game exists, but that's all. I'm going to show Frank 5 cards. Each are either going to be what we call a staple or a stinker, one that was good and one that is not so good. If you guys like this type of content, please like and subscribe and ding the notification bell, and who knows, maybe we'll have you on another staple or stinker. But I think for the moment we should get right into it. Are you ready to get into this? I am. I'm excited. Let's go. So let's start off with the first card. Would you like to give this card a read for me, please? Terraforming. It is a spell card, and there's some symbol at the top right. That's just an indicator of it actually being a spell card. Okay, a nice picture. Definitely more, I don't know, like science fiction feel, I would say. Terraforming Mars is one of my favorite board games, so I'm already getting interested. And the text says, add 1 field spell from your deck to your hand. Alright, I understand deck, I can understand hand. Field spell, for example, is, I guess, what a permanent would be in Magic. Makes sense. So you have spell cards, and that just gives like a one-time effect. Field spells that remain on the board. They have a dedicated zone called the field spells. How many cards do you start with in the game? So you start 5 cards, and your deck has to be a minimum of 40 cards up to a max of 60. So I'm sure we'll get to what the field spells actually do. But my first impression of this is that it is gotta be an absolute staple, like nearly broken card, because it comes at no cost at all. You cast it and then you search through your entire deck, at least that's how I interpret it, and just select the best field spell that you can gain access to in the Magic. We would call it a tutor. In Magic, those are often like the best type of effects you can have, because they just add consistency to your deck, right? They allow you to always get the best cards from your entire library, or alternatively the best card for the situation, to counter whatever the opponent might have, or to stand out with what you have in hand. And if this has no cost at all, then this seems like absolute staple to me. You're 1 for 1. Terraforming is a staple card. Terraforming is really, really good because, like I said, there's no cost to it, and you just get to play it. In Yu-Gi-Oh, we often balance things around the text having a little bit of a snippet that says just, you can only use this effect once per turn, or once per turn you can do this. Terraforming does not have that. Yeah. You just play it, you get a field spell from your deck. Field spells are very, very powerful. There's a lot of decks that just revolve around their field spell doing a lot of stuff for them. There's a field spell called Union Hanger that you can play, and it searches you out another monster that synergizes with a field spell, or a creature, I guess. And then you can summon that creature because there's no mana requirements, because nothing in Yu-Gi-Oh has a cost unless it says on the card. And then that field spell does something else with that monster. Field spells are really, really good. A lot of decks just revolve around their field spell. So having a card that can search out a field spell is amazing. It's just extra copies of the best cards in your deck. Terraforming, a little bit easier one. We're going to move on to the second card. Alright, let's go. If you'd like to give this card a read for me. It's a lot of text. It's a red reboot, a trap card. So maybe that's also a sign that this is a trap. We'll see when your opponent activates a trap card. Okay, so like it's about trap cards in both of the player sets. Negate the activation. So that sounds like in Magic there's a counter spell. And if you do set a card face down, then they can set one other trap directly from their deck. Okay, so it gets countered, and then they pick a trap from their deck that they put down. For the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, your opponent cannot activate trap cards. You can activate this card from your hand by paying off your LP. That's probably your life points. Yeah, that's what I figured. Red reboot is a counter trap card. Let's have another counter trap card. It's the highest spell speed that you can get to, kind of like the way spell speed in Magic as well. Trap cards have an inherent downside, but they must be set face down on the field, and you have to wait 1 turn until you can activate them. So then the trap that is countered, it's like it still lingers around on the field, and it goes for next turn. Yeah, and it goes face down. Well, then my first thought is what we call a Magic card's disadvantage, because you have to use this. The opponent gets a free new trap from their deck. The existing trap that gets countered, well, it is not there for a turn, so you basically throw away 1 card, and the opponent gets a card for free. If I think long term. So then a couple of questions that I would need for initial context. How common are trap cards in Yu-Gi-Oh? Yu-Gi-Oh is typically more monster focused at this current time, and it has been for quite a long time as well. Trap cards are often used inside decks as if you're going first, because you have to set a trap card beforehand. It can be a little bit of a nuisance to be drawn when you're going second. So you can slide it in games where 3, you know you're going first. Another question for context is like, how many turns is a typical game of Yu-Gi-Oh? How long you think a game of Yu-Gi-Oh goes for? If it would be similar to Magic, it would be around, I don't know, like 7 turns or so on average. But given that you asked me this question and that this card is over here, like with the mechanics of traps, maybe it's only like 1 or 2 turns then? Yu-Gi-Oh typically on average lasts about 3 turns. Being my turn, turn 1, your turn, turn 2. My turn, wow. Most decks aim to, on turn 3, be killing your opponent. That does make this card far better, because what I mentioned about the disadvantage that Yugioh still has the same trap cards for later turns, that's completely negated. But it also said that you can activate this card from your hand, but they have your LP. So that kind of gets around the typical trap restriction where you cannot use it until like 1 turn has passed. Right? Generally speaking, life points tend to be a resource in these kinds of games, so that is probably not the biggest cost. I think the effect is going to be actually very powerful if you can be, like 80% sure that the opponent will have a trap in the early game. Then this is basically a counter spell for free, because all the downsides are negligible, because the game is probably over by the time like those next traps would come to effect. My first thought is this is going to be a sideboard staple, but a main deck stinker. That assessment is actually perfect. Nobody would ever really run this in their main deck ever, so you're 100% correct. Yeah. Red Reboot recently got banned. Red Reboot was at 1 for the longest time, which felt real kind of sacky or kind of unfair if you drew it, because you drew 1 off that could stop your opponent from doing something, and then you could win the game off that. The reason Red Reboot is so good in the sideboard, right, is you don't really want to run traps in your main deck unless you're a trap focused deck, unless they do things that are important from hand and stuff like that. Because if you end up going second, it's just dead cards in hand. It's a set no way turn, so traps actually usually going to fall out of the game. When you're going into games 2 and 3, though, if you win, you let your opponent choose if you get go first time. Right? So what your opponent can do is, if they've lost, they can go, okay, well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take all the cards out that like I'm really good at say going second, and replace the cards that are good going first. Right? So you can take a bunch of trap cards that are just essentially floodgates, cards that will shut your opponent down. Say something like, oh, the opponent can only summon twice per turn, or the opponent can't use spells this turn, something like that, right? And because the way traps work, they can get activated at any point in a chain or during like open game state. If your opponent passes the open game state, if your opponent chains a floodgate and you don't really have a response to it, and you're like, what am I supposed to do now? Or they can chain it in response to someone. You're like, now I'm locked into this specific type of monster now, and I can't get rid of it. Red Reboot is amazing because you can just go, okay, from my hand, I'm going to throw a red reboot, pay half my life points. Oh no, my life points are now halved. I'm only on 4,000 life points. You start with 8,000. Wait, what? Yeah, start with 8,000 life. Yeah, don't worry, the attack points of the monsters are inflated as well. We start with 20. Yeah, we got 10 life points. If your opponent activates Floodgate, you can just go, okay, pay half my life points, close in the grave, and then I'm going to shut down that spell. Sure, your opponent gets like a trap on the deck and place on the field, but a little stipulation. You already won the game by that. What red reboot also says is that for the rest of the turn, your opponent cannot activate trap cards. Oh yeah. So if they have multiple trap cards on the field and they activate one and negate with red reboot, unless they have a card that is also a counter trap card, they can't respond. So it just shuts down their whole back row, meaning that it's kind of just game over for them because they have no response. And going first, you don't get to attack in Yu-Gi-Oh. Going second, you do because monsters don't have sunlight signals. I kind of glanced over that ability, but it also shuts down the other trap cards, and I really thought it would be quite useful. But yeah, that makes it amazing in such situations. Yes, let's move on to Earthbreaker. The Lost Warrior from Another Planet. Wow. There's 7 stars. A sweet picture of the Lost Warrior from Another Planet. He is the Last Warrior. Yeah. Warrior Fusion Effect. I just saw the defense. Okay, so the text says Zombina the Darkless, Mario Kutai. Yeah, so it's a fusion monster. It kind of exists in what we call our extra deck, which is, I've seen a few people explain it as like a 15-slot commander zone, where you can basically summon these guys out if you need requirements or have materials for them. And the names that are listed there, the Zombara the Dark and the Bodom, they have to be kind of sent to the graveyard in order for you to summon out this card. Fusions also have a requirement where in order to get them out most of the time, you have to use what's known as a fusion spell, which causes these materials to be fused together to create a bigger monster is the idea behind it. If this card is special summoned, which you always do when you perform a fusion summon. Right, so the type of spell makes sense. Destroy all other monsters you control. Neither player can summon monsters. If I understand correctly, you can only really run this in your extra deck if you have Zombina the Dark and Mario Kutai in your normal deck. Otherwise, you would never be able to summon or fuse it. You could cheat it out in some roundabout ways and some other ways you can do it, but most of the time you are going to have to fusion summon it using the required materials, the listed materials. And fusion spells, I assume, are relatively common effects that you would have on various cards. There's a whole archetype based around kind of like fusion spells or polymerization. The fusion spell requires you to have the materials on hand or in the graveyard or in the field. So usually from one of those 3 places. In rare exceptional circumstances, you can use a fusion card to send cards from your deck. If I look at the effect, like destroy all other monsters you control, obviously a major downside. Neither player can summon monsters. That might be pretty powerful, of course, because I imagine that if this comes down and it's like the biggest monster on the board, and then no one can add like new monsters, then yeah, you're basically towering over the whole battlefield and win that way. How about the attack and defense stats? Are those like way above average, or? So for a monster, 7 stars, 2,350 attack. I hate when they do the 50s. It makes everything so odd. It'd be like if you have a creature in Magic that has 1.5 toughness or something. It's really frustrating. And 2,300 defense, it's about paralyzed. Attack and defense aren't necessarily something you have to take into account when you're looking at the monster's effect, but in this case, because it is kind of like a big bulky monster you're trying to get out, it's nice. Extra monsters like fusion monsters and synchro monsters, which you don't have to worry about. Don't worry, you don't actually have to worry about the stars too much. They don't really matter. They're kind of just a holdover from the fact that all monsters have stars in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh. Destroying your own monsters is like a major downside. Normally that might be the case, but I know in Magic there are also many decks that actually want to destroy their own. There's a lot of floating effects as well in Yu-Gi-Oh. A lot of cards want to get sent to regular effects as well, so it could be beneficial as well. Given all that, if you would put this into a kind of normal deck, so to say, where destroying all other monsters you control is like a major downside, you would not really be happy with this because it's quite a bit of a cost to special summon this, and then sure, neither player can summon monsters. Might be good if, as I said, this might be the only big creature remaining, but if there are lots of effects, as you said, like destroy a monster, then this will easily go to the graveyard or equivalent, and the opponent will then be able to like summon their monsters again. I'm gonna go with Stinker for now because like in essence you have to invest like a lot of resources into this, and like this extra deck could apparently also be filled with a lot of other different cards that you have access to. So there may be better options available. So it's a bit difficult to say without like a proper frame of reference, but like based on the reasoning, I'm gonna go with Stinker. Last Warrior from Another Planet is in fact a pretty garbage card. The way fusion summoning works, you have to have these monsters in your deck. It's annoying. There are cards that substitute like monster names and like fusion substitutes and stuff like that. But in most cases, those cards also list the other material must be correct. So you have to run at least one of these terrible garbage cards because they're not very good. They're basically like vanilla monsters that do nothing as well. I should have asked. I figured that inconsistency would be an issue with all of these fusion cards where you need to get like the right ingredients. But that is a very good assessment of early fusion monsters that used to have very specific like requirements. Like it has to be these two monsters. There is one card that can cheat it out, but that requires you to pay 5,000 life points to get it out. So more than half. So it's a big investment. It's called Cyber Sign. Also, it's a non-searchable monster that's limited to 1. So it's very not consistent at all. It's just it's not something that you're able to do very easily because you're running 2 unsearchable cards in your deck that cannot be sent from deck to graveyard with a fusion spell because those are very specifically usually tied into archetype. Or you have to cheat it out by getting your random one-of in your deck that is also not searchable. Guarantee you one day somebody is going to break this dumb card. Let's go on to our 4 card. Yeah. This is cost down. Just by the name, that sounds like an appealing effect. Wait, no. They're no cost in Yu-Gi-Oh. Like all cards are free. But in any case, I'm actually going to read them now. Yeah. Cost down, spell card. Discard 1 card. For the rest of this turn, reduce the levels of all monsters in your hand by 2, even after they are summoned. Alright, that's related to the start you mentioned earlier. You do have to discard a card, which is surely a downside. You also have to spend this card. But reducing the levels of all monsters in your hands by 2, that would mean that, like I think at first you said that if you have like a monster with a lot of stars, to summon it, you have to basically sacrifice an existing lower level monster. If I compare it as an alternative to perhaps a situation where cooldown is replaced with just such a lower level monster in your hand, right? If your opening hand is a lower level monster rather than cooldown, you could just use that and then use it to like sacrifice it to this. You can normal summon the monster, and then that's it. You can't normal summon or tribute summon from your hand for the rest of the turn. Okay, and this actually allows you to immediately get the tribute monster on the field without having to go through all 5 or 6 stars. It brings it down to 3 or 4, and you can normal summon it like with a tribute. If it's 7 or higher, you're going to have to reduce it down to like 5 or 6, which means you'll probably end up having to like get rid of 1 creature monster from the field. Well, it comes at the cost of playing like a spell card. You also have to discard a card, and normally that would be a downside. But if there's anything I've learned from Magic is that sometimes what might seem like a downside can actually be turned into an upside. In Magic, for example, there are a lot of cards that key off of you discarding cards that get boost that way, or that want to get out of your hand into the graveyard where they can then get like beneficial effects. Yeah. This allows you to choose a card from your hand to discard. Like, there's actually a pretty big upside. So because it is a card that effectively breaks the rules of the game in a seemingly powerful way, and where the downside of discarding might be turned into an upside if you build your deck around that, I imagine that this is a staple.
Unfortunately, this card is not very good. The restriction of only being able to normal summon or tribute someone once per turn kind of kills this card. If there was a situation in which you could go, oh, my monsters now cost 2 and I can summon as many of them as I want, and then tribute monsters on top of that, it'd be really, really good, but kind of because...
And there are like no effects that allow you to then like tribute summon like multiple times.
There are, but they're very few between.
But
the problem here is you need 3 cards in your hand for this to make an impact on the board. And specifically, you need A, cost down, B, a monster that has 5 or higher stars or levels, and you need a card to discard as well. So you need 3 cards in your hand. Tribute summon, normal summon out a monster that you probably could have figured out a way to just special summon instead. Cost down looks really good when you think about it in like, oh, in a very, very simplified game today where it's like, oh, I want to get big monster out of punch. That's like really good because I don't have to pay for like the cost of tribute something. It's nice, but in the way Yu-Gi-Oh works, because you only get one of those summons per turn, it doesn't make enough of an impact and you just make a little too much for it to be really, really good. Will admit this one was the one that I thought if anyone was going to catch it, it was going to be cost down just because it does kind of almost read like reduce the amount of mana that you have to spend on creatures by 1 for the rest of the turn, which sounds really good, but let's see if you can take a 4 out of 5 with this last card.
Alright, let's see it. Give us a read. Card of Demise. Yeah, another spell card. Draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. Also, for the rest of this turn, after discard results, your opponent takes no damage. During the end phase of this turn, send your entire hands to the graveyard. You can only activate 1 card of Demise per turn. You cannot special summon during the turn you activate this card.
Look the card out, by the way. It's his deck being guillotined. He's so upset about it.
Card draw is certainly going to be valuable, especially when you're not drawing any land cards or right, like ways to pay cost. Like everything is like a spell, like a field.
Everything basically costs 0 mana unless it says like discard a card or do an extra thing.
It says draw until you have 3 cards in hand. For the rest of the turn after discard results, applies to your opponent takes no damage, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't apply to keep drawing until you have 3 cards in your hand. You cannot special summon, but you can still use probably normal summons or like a bunch of spell cards. I would imagine that you cannot special summon looks like a big downside, but you can probably build your deck around that in some way. Because the upside of like just drawing a bunch of cards seems very powerful. You first like play all the cards in your opening hand, and then this has the last cards. And this reminds me of like Ancestral Recall in Magic. Here it comes with like a bunch of downsides, which also tells me that they had to put in all these downsides because drawing cards has to be so powerful. Like your opponent takes no damage. Again, that is surely something that you can build your deck around. All the downsides feel at first glance like a lot. But if you can craft your deck around this, even like seemingly bad downsides, you can build around them. Getting around the no special summons might be more tricky for Yu-Gi-Oh! From what I've heard so far, but getting up in resources is more important than the downside, so I would go with Sable.
Card of Demise is exceptionally good. Also, I'm really, really proud of you because you noticed that it was draw until you had 3, not draw 3, because a lot of people go, oh, draw 3, but it's just drawn, so you have to empty your hand out first. Yeah, drawing 3 cards is stupid. Drawing 3 cards is like the dumbest thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it's like, it's free, everything's free, so you just start doing things.
All the cards you will draw.
You are right, that your opponent not taking battle damage, not that big a deal. Not because you can use alternate win conditions for win, but because of the fact that if you're going first, you're not going to deal damage to them this turn anyway, because you don't have a battle phase.
Oh, fair. You just use this on the first turn, and then the opponent's turn, and then you win actually on turn after.
It also was used in a deck that revolved around, very funnily enough, tribute something that didn't necessarily need to worry about its stars, because it could use either traps or spells as material to be tribute summoned. So tribute something is only very good when there's mechanics that circumvent the traditional rules, but it's so amazing in decks that don't have to do it, it just pushes their consistency up so much. And even then, discarding all the cards to the graveyard at the end of the end.
At the point, you probably have played all.
Yeah, you play them all, you put them out the field, or and sometimes spells and traps also have like floating effects when they hit the graveyard, they'll do some effect and they'll either add another card to your hand. So you are dead right, this card is in fact a staple. It actually seems like a great game with a lot of effects that don't break the rules of the game, which makes it fun to craft your decks and try to build around negating those downsides. Yeah, so I'm captivated. You've done exceptionally well. 4 out of 5 cards are correctly in a card game that you've never even looked at before is insane, and really just you really do earn the title of Game Theory Master. If you guys like that and you want to see more Magic People's Faces on this channel assessing weird Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards and guessing whether they're good or not, please like and comment and subscribe. And let us know in the comments below what cards you think you should actually go, because it's actually quite hard to figure out what stinkers we're showing. There's a lot of good staples in the game, but the